Neural Control and Coordination, Chapter 18. As you know, the function of the organ system in our body must be coordinated to maintain homeostasis. Coordination is the process through which two or more organs interact and complement the function of one another. For example, when we do physical exercise, the energy demand is increased for maintaining an increased muscular activity. The supply of oxygen is also increased. The increased supply of oxygen necessitates an increase in the rate of respiration, heartbeat, and increased blood flow via blood vessels. When physical exercise is stopped, the activities of nerves, lungs, heart, and kidney gradually return to their normal condition. Thus, the function of muscles, lungs, heart, blood vessels, kidney, and other organs are coordinated while performing physical activity exercises. In our body, the neural system and the endocrine system jointly coordinate and integrate all the activities of the organ so that they function in a synchronized fashion. The neural system provides an organized network of point-to-point connection for quick coordination. The endocrine system provides chemical integration through hormones. In this chapter, you will learn about the neural system of human, mechanism of neural coordination like transmission of nerve impulse and impulse conduction across synapses. Neural system. The neural system of all animals is composed of highly specialized cells called neurons, which can detect, receive, and transmit different kinds of stimuli. The neural organization is very simple in lower invertebrates. For example, in Hydra, it is composed of a network of neurons. The neural system is better organized in insects, where brain is present along with a number of ganglia and neural tissue. The vertebrate have a more developed neural system. Human neural system. Human neural system is divided into two parts: CNS, that is central nervous system, and PNS, that is peripheral nervous system. The CNS includes brain and the spinal cord and is the site of information processing and control. The PNS comprises of all the nerves of the body associated with CNS, that is brain and spinal cord. The nerve fiber of PNS are of two types: A. Afferent fibers, B. Efferent fibers. The afferent nerve fiber transmit impulse from tissue or organ to the CNS, and efferent fiber transmit regulatory impulse from the CNS to the concerned peripheral tissue or organ. The CNS is divided into two divisions called somatic neural system and autonomic neural system. The somatic neural system relays impulse from the CNS to skeletal muscles, while the autonomic neural system transmit impulse from CNS to the involuntary organs and smooth muscles of body. The autonomic neural system is further classified into sympathetic neural system and parasympathetic neural system. Visceral nervous system is the part of peripheral nervous system that comprises the whole complex of nerves, fibers, ganglia, and plexus by which impulse travel from the central nervous system to the viscera and from viscera to the central nervous system. Neuron as structural and functional unit of neural system. A neuron is a microscopic structure composed of three major parts, namely cell body, dendrites, and axon, that is shown in figure 18.1. The cell body contains cytoplasm with typical cell organelles and certain granular bodies called Nissel's granule. Short fiber which branch repeatedly and project out of the cell body also contain Nissel's granule and are called dendrites. These fibers transmit impulse from the cell body. The axon is a long fiber, the distal end of which is branched. Each branch terminates as a bulb-like structure called synaptic knob, which possess synaptic vesicles containing chemicals called neurotransmitters. The axon transmits a nerve impulse away from the cell body to a synapse or to a neuromuscular junction. Based on the number of axons and dendrites, the neurons are divided into three types. First, multipolar neuron with one axon and two or more dendrites, found in cerebral cortex. Bipolar neuron with one axon and one dendrite, found in the retina of eye. Unipolar neuron, which is having cell body with one axon only, found usually in the embryonic stage. These are two types of axon, namely myelinated and non-myelinated. The myelinated nerve fiber are enveloped with Schwann cells which form a myelin sheath around the axon. The gaps between two adjacent myelin sheaths are called nodes of Ranvier. Myelinated nerve fiber are found in spinal and cranial nerves. Unmyelinated nerve fiber is enclosed by a Schwann cell that does not form a myelin sheath around the axon and is commonly found in autonomous and somatic neural system. This is a diagram of neuron which is important for exam purpose. Generation and conduction of nerve impulse. Neurons are excitable cells because their membrane are in polarized state. Do you know why the membrane of a neuron is polarized? Different type of ion channels are present on the neural membrane. These ion channels are selectively permeable to different ions. When a neuron is not conducting any impulse that is resting, the axonal membrane is comparatively more permeable to potassium ions and nearly impermeable to sodium ions. Similarly, the membrane is impermeable to negatively charged proteins present in the exoplasm. Consequently, the exoplasm inside the axon contain high concentration of potassium and negatively charged proteins and low concentration of sodium. In contrast, the fluid outside the axon contain a low concentration of potassium, a high concentration of sodium, and thus forms a concentration gradient. These ionic gradients across the resting membrane are maintained by the active transport of ions by sodium-potassium pump, which transports 3 Na outwards for 2 potassium into the cell. As a result, the outer surface of the axonal membrane possesses a positive charge while its inner surface becomes negatively charged and therefore is polarized. The electrical potential difference across the resting plasma membrane is called as resting potential. This is a diagram representation of impulse conduction through an axon. You might be curious to know about the mechanism of generation of nerve impulse and its conduction along an axon. When a stimulus is applied at a site, figure 18.2 showing example point A. On the polarized membrane, the membrane at the site A becomes freely permeable to sodium ions. This leads to a rapid influx of sodium ions followed by the reversal of polarity at that site. That is, the outer surface of the membrane become negatively charged and the inner side become positively charged. The polarity of the membrane at the site A is thus reversed and hence depolarized. The electric potential the electrical potential difference across the plasma membrane at the site A is called the action potential, which is in fact termed as nerve impulse at sites immediately ahead the axon. Example, site B, site B in this figure. Membrane has a positive charge on the outer surface and a negative charge on its inner surface. As a result, current flows on the inner surface from site A to B. On the outer surface, current flows from site B to A, shown in figure 18.2. To complete the circuit of current flow, hence the polarity at the site is reversed and an action potential is generated at site B. Thus, the impulse, that is action potential, generated at a site A arrives at site B. The sequence is repeated along the length of an axon and consequently the impulse is conducted. The rise in the stimulus induced permeability to sodium plus ions is extremely short lived. It is quickly followed by a rise in permeability of potassium ion within a fraction of a second. Potassium diffuses outside the membrane and restores the resting potential of the membrane at the site of excitation, and the fibers become once more responsive to further stimulation. Transmission of impulses. A nerve impulse is transmitted from one neuron to another through junctions called synapses. A synapse is formed by the membrane of presynaptic neuron and a postsynaptic neuron, which may or may not be separated by a gap called synaptic cleft. There are two types of synapses, namely electrical synapse and chemical synapses. At electrical synapse, the membrane of pre and postsynaptic membrane sorry, at electrical synapses, the membrane of pre and postsynaptic neurons are in very close proximity. Electric current can flow directly from one neuron into the other across these synapses. Transmission of an impulse across electrical synapses is very similar to impulse conduction along a single axon. Impulse transmission across an electrical synapse is always faster than that across a chemical synapse. Electrical synapses are rare in our system. At a chemical synapse, the membrane of the pre and postsynaptic neurons are separated by a fluid filled space called synaptic cleft, shown in figure 18.3. Do you know how the presynaptic neurons transmit an impulse action potential across the synaptic cleft to the postsynaptic neuron? Chemicals called neurotransmitters are involved in the transmission of impulse at these synapses. The axon terminal contain vesicles filled with these neurotransmitters. When an impulse, that is action potential, arrives at the axon terminal, it stimulates the movement of the synaptic vesicle toward the membrane where they fuse with the plasma. membrane and release their neurotransmitters in the synaptic cleft. The released neurotransmitters bind to their specific receptors present on the postsynaptic membrane. This binding opens ion channel, allowing the entry of ion, which can generate a new potential in the postsynaptic neuron. The new potential developed may be either excitatory or inhibitory. This is a diagram showing axon terminal and synapse. Central neural system. The brain is the central information processing organ of our body and act as the command and control system. It controls the voluntary movements, balance of the body, functioning of vital involuntary organs, that is lungs, hearts, kidney, etc. Thermoregulation, hunger and thirst, circadian rhythm, that is 24-hour sleep-wake cycle of our body, activities of several endocrine glands and human behavior. It is also the site for processing of vision, hearing, speech, memory, intelligence, emotions, and thoughts. The human brain is well protected by the skull. Inside the skull, the brain is covered by cranial meninges constituting consisting of an outer layer called durameter, a very thin middle layer called arachnoid, and an inner layer which is in contact with the brain tissue called pyometer. The brain can be divided into three major parts, that is forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain, shown in figure 18.4. This is the diagram of brain showing sagittal section of human brain. Forebrain. The forebrain consists of cerebrum, thalamus, hypothalamus, shown in figure 18.4. Cerebrum forms the major part of human brain. A deep cleft divides the cerebrum longitudinally into two halves, which are termed as the left and right cerebral hemisphere. The hemispheres are connected by a tract of nerve fibers called corpus callosum. The layer of cells which cover the cerebral hemisphere is called cerebral cortex and is thrown into prominent folds. The cerebral cortex is referred to as gray matter due to its grayish appearance. The neuron cell bodies are concentrated here, giving the color. The cerebral cortex contains motor area, sensory area, and large regions that are neither clearly sensory nor motor in function. These regions, called as the association areas, are responsible for complex functions like intersensory association, memory, and communication. Fiber of the tract are covered with the myelin sheath, which constitute the inner part of cerebral hemisphere. They give an opaque white appearance to the layer and hence is called the white matter. The cerebrum wraps around a structure called thalamus, which is major coordinating center for sensory and motor signaling. Another very important part of the brain is called hypothalamus, lies at the base of the thalamus. The hypothalamus contains a number of centers which cover sorry the hypothalamus contains a number of centers which control body temperature, urge for eating and drinking. It also contains several group of neurosecretory cells which secrete hormones called hypothalamic hormones. The inner part of cerebral hemisphere and a group of associated deep structures like amygdala, hippocampus, etc. forms a complex structure called the limbic lobe or limbic system. Along with the hypothalamus, it is involved in the regulation of sexual behavior, expression of emotional reactions, etc., excitement, pleasure, rage, fear, and motivation. Midbrain. The midbrain is located between the thalamus, hypothalamus of the forebrain, and pons of the hindbrain. A canal called cerebral aqueduct passes through the midbrain. The dorsal portion of the midbrain consists mainly of four round swellings, that is lobes, called corpora quadrigemina. Hindbrain. The hindbrain comprises pons, cerebellum, and medulla, also called as medulla oblongata. Pons consist of fiber tracts that interconnect different regions of the brain. Cerebellum has a very convoluted surface in order to provide the additional space for many more neurons. The medulla of the brain is connected to the spinal cord. The medulla contains centers which control respiration, cardiovascular reflexes, and gastric secretions. Three major regions make up the brainstem, that is midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. Brainstem forms the connection between the brain and the spinal cord. Some important lines given in the summary are: inner part of cerebral hemisphere and a group of associated deep structure forms a structure called limbic system, which is concerned with olfaction, autonomic responses, regulation of sexual behavior, expression of emotional reactions, and motivation. Olfaction is the extra point written here. The cerebellum integrates information received from the semicircular canal of the ear and auditory system. This is also extra. Pons consist of fiber tracts that interconnect different regions of brain. Thank you.